Few people know that one of the most influential Buddhist monks of the 20th century dedicated his life to teaching not only how to live, but also how to prepare for death. His name was Thich Nhat Hanh, a gentle yet powerful voice of wisdom, whose words reached far beyond monasteries and spiritual circles. He was a poet, a peace activist, and a close friend of Martin Luther King Jr., who once nominated him for the Nobel Peace Prize. His lectures and books have touched millions of lives, bringing solace to those facing loss and guidance to those searching for meaning. Even scientists and psychologists cite his teachings when speaking about mindfulness and the human confrontation with mortality. Yet his greatest gift was showing that death is not an enemy to be feared, but a natural continuation of life. Thich Nhat Hanh left behind 5 essential steps that every person should embrace before the end comes. 5 keys that transform death from a frightening conclusion into a doorway to peace. Most people live caught between 2 illusions, the weight of the past and the anxiety of the future. We replay old mistakes, regrets, and conversations that cannot be changed, or we project fears into a tomorrow that has not yet arrived. Thich Nhat Hanh insisted that this way of living is the greatest tragedy of human existence, because it blinds us to the only reality that ever truly belongs to us, the present moment. He often said, "The present moment is filled with joy and happiness. If you are attentive, you will see it." For him, mindfulness was not an abstract philosophy, but a practical art of returning, again and again, to the here and now. His method was deceptively simple. He taught that the first step to living in the present is to return to the breath. When we inhale with awareness, we anchor ourselves in life itself. Breathing in, we know we are alive. Breathing out, we release tension, fear, and the restless pull of time. In this way, a single conscious breath can transform a scattered mind into a place of calm. Many of his students recounted that in moments of fear, before medical treatments, during grief, or in the face of death itself, simply practicing mindful breathing shifted panic into presence. What seems like a small gesture becomes a doorway into freedom, because through the breath we rediscover the miracle of simply being alive in this moment. Thich Nhat Hanh reminded people that living in the present is not an escape from responsibility or planning for the future. Instead, it is a way of ensuring that we are fully alive while preparing for what comes next. When we eat, we should truly taste the food instead of devouring it while scrolling through worries. When we walk, we should feel the ground beneath our feet instead of rushing to the next task. He called this walking meditation, the art of letting each step bring you home to yourself. By doing so, ordinary moments become extraordinary because we are finally awake to them. Facing death, the present moment becomes even more precious. Those who are nearing the end often experience a sharp clarity. The past is no longer changeable, the future is almost gone, and what remains is only this breath, this heartbeat, this encounter with another human being. Thich Nhat Hanh believed that the dying have much to teach the living, because in their presence the truth of impermanence cannot be ignored. He would often sit with those close to death and guide them back to the breath, back to the immediacy of life, so that their final hours were not wasted in fear, but filled with peace. In this way, death itself becomes a teacher of mindfulness, stripping away illusions and pointing directly to the now. Without the ability to live in the present, life slips through our fingers like water. We may accumulate possessions, achievements, or memories, but if we are never truly present for them, they pass by as if they never existed. Thich Nhat Hanh warned that many people only realize this at the very end, when it is too late to live differently. That is why he urged his students to begin now with the smallest of practices, a mindful breath, a conscious step, a gentle smile. These acts, repeated daily, reshape our relationship with time and allow us to savor life as it unfolds. To live in the present moment is not merely a spiritual exercise, it is preparation for death. When the final moment arrives, no amount of regret or future planning will matter. What will matter is whether we can rest in the reality of that instant with openness and peace. Thich Nhat Hanh's teaching is a reminder that learning to be present now ensures we will not be strangers to the present when death itself comes. In embracing this truth, we do not only prepare for dying, we finally learn how to live. Thich Nhat Hanh often reminded his students that forgiveness is liberation. He taught that carrying anger, resentment, or guilt is like dragging heavy stones tied to the heart. These burdens weigh down the spirit and cloud the mind, preventing us from touching peace. When people come close to death, they realize with painful clarity how these unhealed wounds have shaped their lives. They may feel regret for harsh words spoken long ago, or bitterness towards someone who hurt them, or shame for mistakes never forgiven. Thich Nhat Hanh said that without reconciliation, with ourselves and with others, we cannot die peacefully, and we cannot truly live. Reconciliation begins within. Many people are far harsher toward themselves than they are toward others. They replay failures in their minds and punish themselves with guilt long after the situation has passed. Thich Nhat Hanh taught that this cycle of self-blame creates a prison. To break free, one must learn to see mistakes not as permanent scars, but as lessons on the path. He often encouraged people to place a hand on their heart and breathe, acknowledging their suffering without judgment. "I know you suffer, my dear one, and I am here for you." This act of self-compassion allows the heart to soften and the past to loosen its grip. Forgiving oneself, he explained, is the foundation for forgiving others. But reconciliation cannot stop with the self. Sooner or later, it must extend outward. Thich Nhat Hanh urged people to seek out those with whom they were in conflict, even if the conflict was decades old. He encouraged writing letters, speaking simple but sincere words like, "I am sorry," or "I forgive you." For him, reconciliation was not about proving who was right or wrong, but about healing the connection that had been broken. He reminded his students that every moment could be the last opportunity to say these words, and waiting too long meant carrying regrets that no one could erase. In his community at Plum Village, he guided rituals of reconciliation between family members, partners, and even political opponents. There, people would sit facing one another, breathing together, and speaking truthfully from the heart. Many described these encounters as life-changing. Anger melted into tears, long-held pain gave way to relief, and relationships once thought irreparable were restored. He believed that such healing was not only for the individuals involved, but for the world, because every act of reconciliation created ripples of peace. When it comes to death, reconciliation takes on a deeper urgency. Thich Nhat Hanh often said that no one wants to die with a heavy heart. Facing the end of life, people do not wish for more possessions or achievements. They long for resolution. They want to know that their loved ones forgive them, that they have expressed their love, and that their unfinished business is laid to rest. Without this, dying can feel like leaving a room full of unfinished conversations and unspoken words. With reconciliation, death becomes a gentle letting go, because there is nothing left to cling to. Stories from those who practiced his teachings illustrate this power vividly. In one case, a woman who had been estranged from her brother for many years sought him out after attending a retreat with Thich Nhat Hanh. She told him simply, "I don't want to leave this world without peace between us." Though the past could not be undone, the act of reaching out brought tears and a reconciliation that allowed them both to feel light again. She later said that her final years were free of the bitterness that had once consumed her. Such examples echo a truth that Thich Nhat Hanh emphasized. Reconciliation does not erase the past, but it transforms the present and shapes the way we face the future. Forgiveness, then, is not a gift we give to others. It is a gift we give ourselves. By releasing anger and guilt, we create space for peace to enter. In doing so, we prepare not only for a more harmonious life, but also for a gentle death. Thich Nhat Hanh believed that when the heart is light, death loses its terror. To reconcile with oneself and with others is to free the soul from chains, so that when the final moment arrives, we can let go without fear. For Thich Nhat Hanh, compassion was never an abstract concept reserved for saints or spiritual masters. He taught that compassion is born from understanding, and that anyone, through attentive presence, can cultivate it in daily life. When we truly see the suffering of another, something within us shifts. Anger softens, judgment fades, and the desire to help arises naturally. He often said that to understand is to love, and without understanding, love remains shallow. Compassion, then, is not just a feeling, but a practice. woven into the smallest gestures: a kind word, a patient silence, a gentle smile, or a willingness to listen without interruption. He warned against the tendency to reduce love to grand declarations while neglecting the quiet actions that sustain relationships. Real love, he explained, is expressed through attention. To give someone your full presence is the greatest gift, because it tells them, "I see you, I hear you, I recognize your pain and your joy." In this sense, compassion was a discipline, a way of training the heart to move beyond selfishness and into true connection with others. Practiced daily, it becomes a source of strength that reshapes how we relate not only to people we care about, but also to strangers, and even to those we consider enemies. Thich Nhat Hanh believed that compassion is also the antidote to fear, particularly the fear of death. Fear thrives on separation, the illusion that we are isolated beings cut off from everything else. But love and compassion reveal the opposite, that we are deeply interconnected, threads in a vast web of existence. When we act with compassion, we feel ourselves as part of a larger whole, and this realization softens the terror of impermanence. He often compared compassion to light. In the presence of light, darkness cannot remain. In the same way, when compassion fills the heart, fear loses its grip. Many of his students testified to how compassion transformed their experience of dying and caregiving. In Plum Village and in hospitals where his teachings spread, caregivers practiced mindful presence with those nearing death. Rather than focusing only on medical procedures, they sat, breathed, and held the hand of the dying, offering silence and warmth. Families reported that this simple presence eased not only the fear of the person dying, but also the grief of those who stayed behind. One story tells of a man who, after years of bitterness, softened in his final weeks when his daughter, guided by Thich Nhat Hanh's teachings, began to sit quietly by his bed and breathe with him. He said, "I feel your love more than your words," and passed away peacefully, reconciled with her. Such stories illustrate his conviction that compassion is not a theory, but a practice that can transform even the final chapter of life. Love, in this vision, is what allows death to be faced with dignity. It provides the assurance that we will not be forgotten, because the love we gave remains alive in the hearts of others. Thich Nhat Hanh taught that our true continuation is not only biological, but also relational. The way we loved, the compassion we shared, and the kindness we embodied continue to ripple outward long after our physical body has disappeared. In this sense, compassion and love are stronger than death. They outlast possessions, reputations, and achievements because they are woven into the very lives of those we touched. The ultimate lesson is simple, yet profound. When the end comes, what remains is not what we owned or controlled, but how we loved. To practice compassion daily is to prepare for death without fear, knowing that we will live on in the love we have given. Thich Nhat Hanh's reminder was that compassion is not an optional extra. It is the essence of what makes life meaningful, and it is the bridge that carries us peacefully into death. One of the deepest truths Thich Nhat Hanh emphasized throughout his life was the principle of impermanence. Nothing remains fixed. Youth fades, health declines, relationships shift, and even the mountains and rivers change with time. For many, this reality is frightening because it reveals how fragile everything we hold on to truly is. Yet for Thich Nhat Hanh, impermanence was not a cause for despair, but a doorway to freedom. He taught that when we embrace the truth that everything changes, we stop clinging so desperately and begin to live more fully. He often used the image of a cloud to explain this mystery. A cloud may one day transform into rain, and that rain may flow into a river, which may later become vapor and rise again into the sky. To the untrained eye, it may seem that the cloud has disappeared, but in truth, it has only changed form. In the same way, nothing in life is ever truly lost. It only transforms. He would remind his students that if you are mindful, you can still see the cloud in the rain, in the river, and in the tea you drink. The lesson was clear. Death itself is a form of transformation, not annihilation. When we understand this, our fear of loss softens, and our hearts open to the miracle of constant change. Impermanence, he explained, is what makes love possible. If we lived forever without change, we would never recognize the preciousness of the people and moments around us. Because we know that time is limited, each meeting becomes more meaningful, each word more valuable, each embrace more tender. He would often tell his listeners, "Because things are impermanent, they are precious." Rather than resisting this truth, he invited people to celebrate it, to see the fleeting nature of life as the very reason it shines so brightly. Many who came to his retreats struggled with grief, the pain of losing a parent, a partner, or even a child. Thich Nhat Hanh guided them to see that while the form of their loved one had changed, the essence remained in new ways. He would encourage them to breathe and to look deeply, to recognize their loved one in their own gestures, in the smile of a stranger, in the wind moving through the trees. By doing so, grief became not only sorrow for what was gone, but also gratitude for what still continued. This perspective did not erase pain, but transformed it into a deeper understanding of connection. Accepting impermanence also changes the way we live day to day. Instead of grasping at youth or possessions as if they could last forever, we begin to cherish them without illusion. We take care of our bodies not because they will never age, but because they are precious in this moment. We value our relationships not because they are guaranteed, but because they are alive today. And we engage in life not with arrogance, but with humility, knowing that everything can shift in an instant. This humility paradoxically brings joy. When we no longer fight against change, we discover freedom from much of our suffering. Thich Nhat Hanh reminded his students that resisting impermanence only deepens fear. Many people live with constant anxiety about losing what they love, but when we open ourselves to change, the fear of death loses its grip. Death becomes not a catastrophe, but part of the same flow that carries the cloud into rain. To accept impermanence is to live without illusion and to die without regret. It is to recognize that we belong to a universe in constant motion, and that our task is not to stop the river, but to learn how to float with it gracefully. In the end, impermanence is not a punishment, but a gift. It is what allows us to grow, to transform, and to awaken. Thich Nhat Hanh saw it as the essence of life's beauty, because nothing lasts forever, every moment matters. To accept this truth is to walk through the world with lighter steps, a softer heart, and a deeper appreciation for the fragile miracle of being alive. Thich Nhat Hanh often told his students, "I will never die. I continue in you, in my disciples, in the trees, and in the clouds." This was not poetry meant to soften the sting of death, but a direct expression of his deepest conviction. Death is not an end, but a continuation in another form. To illustrate this truth, he returned again and again to the image of the cloud. A cloud, he explained, cannot die. One day it may transform into rain, falling upon the earth and nourishing plants, filling rivers, and becoming part of the ocean. Later, it may rise again as vapor, returning to the sky. Though its appearance changes, its essence remains. In the same way, a human being cannot vanish into nothing. We continue in our actions, in our children, in the lives we have touched, and in the very fabric of existence. For Thich Nhat Hanh, this understanding was not meant only for monks or spiritual practitioners, but for everyone who faces the fear of mortality. He knew that most people tremble at the thought of ceasing to exist, of disappearing forever. But if we learn to see as he saw, death becomes less frightening. Just as we do not mourn the cloud when it becomes rain, we need not despair when the body changes form. The person we love has not been erased, they have simply taken on a new manifestation. In this light, death reveals itself as transformation, not annihilation. He encouraged people grieving the loss of loved ones to look deeply. When a mother dies, she continues in her children, in the gestures, habits, and even the laughter she passed on. When a teacher departs, he continues in the students who embody his wisdom. When a friend is gone, they continue in the memories and kindness that still ripple outward. Thich Nhat Hanh believed that if we train ourselves to see in this way, the sharp line between life and death begins to blur. Instead of seeing a hard stop, we recognize a continuum. This perspective allows both the dying and the living to find peace. This teaching reached far beyond the Buddhist world. His books, such as No Death, No Fear, became a source of comfort for people from many backgrounds, including those with no religious faith. Readers facing terminal illness or mourning the loss of a loved one found solace in his words, which reframed death from something final into something flowing. Even psychologists and grief counselors began to draw on his insights, recognizing that his vision aligned with the human need to find meaning in loss. His message resonated because it was not built on dogma, but on observation. Just as clouds transform, so do we. Seeing death as continuation also changes how we live. When we know that our actions, words, and love continue beyond our physical presence, we become more mindful of how we touch the world. Each smile, each act of kindness, each moment of compassion becomes part of the continuation we will leave behind. Thich Nhat Hanh reminded his students that immortality is not found in monuments or achievements, but in the subtle ways we remain present in the lives of others and in the earth itself. In this sense, death becomes less a personal tragedy and more a reminder of our interconnectedness. The fear of death diminishes when we realize that we are not isolated fragments, but part of a larger stream of life. Just as the cloud belongs to the sky, the rain, and the river, we belong to one another and to the whole universe. To die is simply to change form within this vast cycle. Thich Nhat Hanh's vision helps dissolve the terror of the unknown by showing that nothing is truly lost. The body returns to the earth, the breath returns to the air, and the essence of who we are continues in countless visible and invisible ways. In the end, he wanted people to see that death is not the closing of a book, but the turning of a page. Life and death are not two separate realities, but parts of a single continuum. To embrace this view is to step beyond fear and into peace. As he taught, when we see clearly, we can say with confidence, "There is no birth, there is no death, only transformation." Death, Thich Nhat Hanh often said, is a mirror of life. We do not suddenly become different people at the end. We leave this world in the same state of mind and heart in which we have lived. If our days have been consumed by rushing, resentment, and distraction, the moment of death will likely feel heavy, filled with unfinished business and regret. But if we have spent our lives cultivating mindfulness, reconciliation, compassion, and acceptance, then death reveals itself not as a violent break, but as a natural continuation. The way we live shapes the way we die, and the way we die shapes the legacy we leave behind. Thich Nhat Hanh taught that learning to die is inseparable from learning to live. He urged people to practice dying every day, not in a morbid sense, but by letting go of anger, letting go of fear, letting go of illusions of permanence. Each small act of release is a rehearsal for the great letting go that awaits us all. When you learn to die every day, he said, you learn how to live. This practice transforms death from an enemy lurking in the shadows into a familiar companion, reminding us of what truly matters. The urgency lies in the fact that no one knows how much time remains. Many postpone forgiveness, love, and mindfulness until later, but later may never come. Thich Nhat Hanh insisted that the only moment available to us is now, and if we wait for the perfect time, we risk reaching the end unprepared. To begin today, even with the smallest step, is to honor the life we have been given and to prepare the ground for a peaceful transition when death arrives. The 5 teachings he emphasized are not rigid commandments but gentle reminders. Live fully in the present, reconcile with yourself and others, cultivate compassion and love, embrace impermanence, and see death as continuation. These are the seeds that allow both life and death to be experienced with clarity and peace. To practice them is to ensure that when the final breath comes, it will be met not with fear but with understanding. Life, he showed, is not about escaping death but about preparing for it wisely, so that when we cross the threshold, we do so with an open heart and a light spirit. Dear friends, if you had to choose just one step worth taking before you die, which one would you choose? If you liked this video, please like it, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. See you soon.